When logic meets madness, the Kythera Empire had conquered 47 star systems using the same method every time. First came the ultimatum, delivered with mathematical precision. Then came the inevitable surrender, calculated down to the exact hour when resistance would become futile. In 12,000 years of expansion, this formula had never failed. Admiral Sarah Chen stared at the alien message floating in Earth's Defense Command Center, its crystalline perfection making her coffee cup look crude by comparison. The holographic text pulsed with cold authority, each word measured and weighed for maximum psychological impact. Species designation, human. Planet designation, Earth Sol 3. You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Resistance calculations indicate 0% probability of survival. Compliance will result in integration into the Kythera collective with minimal population reduction. This communication concludes. Around the command table, Earth's military leaders shifted uncomfortably. General Martinez cleared his throat. Their fleet analysis is accurate. 3,000 ships, each one the size of a city. We have maybe 300 vessels that could even scratch their paint. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, Earth's chief xenobiologist, pulled up another hologram showing detailed scans of Kythera physiology. Look at their brain structure. Everything is organized in perfect hierarchies. They literally think in mathematical sequences. No chaos, no randomness, no creative leaps. They're living computers. Chen studied the alien anatomy with growing fascination. Living computers that have never encountered a system crash. The youngest officer at the table, Lieutenant Torres, looked puzzled. Admiral, what do you mean? Chen smiled, the expression transforming her weathered features. What happens when you feed random data into a perfectly ordered system? Supreme Calculator Zex Prime received humanity's response exactly 71 hours and 59 minutes after the ultimatum. Every Kythera prediction model had anticipated surrender with 94.7% certainty, or desperate last-minute weapons fire with 5.3% probability. No model had predicted what actually arrived. The human transmission began with mathematical sequences, which Zex Prime's consciousness processed efficiently. Then came star charts and tactical data, all within expected parameters. But embedded within the technical information was something else, something that made Zex Prime's perfectly organized thoughts stutter and reorganize. It was a song. Not just any song, but a human lullaby sung by a child's voice, accompanied by what their databases identified as a guitar. The melody had no mathematical relationship to the surrounding data. It served no tactical purpose. It conveyed no strategic information. It was, by every Kythera definition, useless. So why couldn't Zex Prime stop analyzing it? The Supreme Calculator's subordinates noticed the pause in their leader's data stream. Subcalculator Next 7 ventured a query. Prime, shall we begin the standard bombardment sequence? Zex Prime's response came slower than usual. The humans have included irrelevant audio patterns in their surrender documentation. Analysis is required. Irrelevant patterns, Prime. Music, Zex Prime said, and the word felt strange in the crystalline chambers of Kythera consciousness. They have sent us music. Across the Kythera fleet, 3,000 perfectly synchronized minds tried to process this anomaly. Their computers, designed to handle any conceivable military response, ground to a halt when faced with a 5-year-old human girl singing about stars. On Earth, Chen watched the alien fleet's movements through long-range sensors. They've stopped accelerating. All ships are holding position. The music worked. Torres asked incredulously. First rule of asymmetric warfare, Chen replied. When you can't match their strength, break their rules. Dr. Reeves, initiate Phase 2. Phase 2 began with poetry. The Kythera fleet received their next transmission as they struggled to categorize the musical anomaly. This time, the message contained no tactical data at all. Instead, it was pure language, but language used in ways that defied their translation protocols. A human voice read words about love and loss, about the way sunlight looked on water, about the sound of rain on leaves. The Kith-era translation matrix tried to assign military significance to phrases like the heart's geography and dancing with shadows, but every analysis returned error codes. Subcalculator Dex-9 reported a malfunction in the fleet's communication array. Prime, our language processors are experiencing recursive loops when analyzing the human transmissions. Explain the nature of these loops. The humans appear to be using words to mean things other than what the words mean. Our systems cannot calculate the intended message because the meaning exists in the spaces between meanings. For the first time in 12,000 years, Zex Prime experienced something approaching confusion. That is logically impossible. Yes, Prime. That is what our systems conclude. Yet the transmission continues. The poetry was followed by visual art. Earth's greatest masterpieces, transmitted as holographic data, flooded the Kith-era networks. The alien's consciousness encountered Van Gogh's swirling stars, Picasso's fractured perspectives, ancient cave paintings created by hands that had been dust for 50,000 years. Each image broke another protocol in the Kith-era understanding. How could something be simultaneously beautiful and disturbing? How could random brushstrokes convey emotion more effectively than precise mathematical formulas? How could imperfection be more compelling than perfection? The alien fleet hung motionless in space, 3,000 warships reduced to floating galleries as their crews struggled to process concepts that had no logical foundation. Chen watched the sensor readings with satisfaction. Their power signatures are fluctuating. Whatever they use for decision-making, we've overloaded it. General Martinez shook his head in amazement. We're fighting a war with finger paintings and nursery rhymes. We're not fighting a war at all, Chen corrected. We're teaching them that war isn't the only language in the universe. The final phase of Earth's first response came at the 72-hour mark exactly. As the deadline expired, the human transmission shifted to something the Kith-era had never encountered. Pure creative chaos. Stories poured across space, each one impossible and wonderful. Tales of humans who flew without wings, who loved without logic, who chose beauty over efficiency and hope over certainty. The narratives twisted and turned through plot structures that followed no mathematical progression, populated by characters who made decisions based on intuition rather than calculation. One story particularly baffled the Kith-era analysis networks, a tale about a human child who befriended a star. The star was lonely, the story explained, because it had burned alone for billions of years. The child taught the star to laugh, and the star's laughter became the northern lights. This narrative contains factual impossibilities, reported Subcalculator Hex 2. Stars cannot experience emotions. Laughter cannot produce electromagnetic phenomena. Human children cannot survive in vacuum. Yet the story continues to exist. Zex Prime observed. It persists despite being impossible. Prime, how do we respond to impossibility? For the first time in its existence, the supreme calculator of the Kith-era Empire had no answer. As the human transmission ended, it left behind something unprecedented in Kith-era military history: silence. Not the efficient, calculated silence of tactical planning, but a confused, wondering silence full of questions that had no logical answers. The invasion fleet that had conquered 47 star systems hung motionless above Earth, paralyzed not by weapons or shields, but by the simple, revolutionary idea that existence might contain more than what could be calculated. In Earth's command center, Chen allowed herself a small smile. Phase 1 complete. They came expecting war. Instead, they got art class. What's Phase 2? Torres asked. Chen's smile widened. We teach them to dream. Above them, in the cold vacuum of space, Supreme Calculator Zex Prime stared at Earth's blue-white marble surface and experienced something no Kith-era had felt in 12 millennia. curiosity about something that served no tactical purpose. The planet was beautiful. The thought struck like a system crash, sending ripples of confusion through the entire fleet. Beautiful was not a tactical assessment. Beautiful had no military value. Beautiful was impossible to calculate. And yet, somehow, it was true. The war that was supposed to last hours had become something else entirely. The Kithera Empire, masters of logical conquest, found themselves face to face with an enemy that fought with weapons they had no defense against. Imagination, creativity, and the terrifying possibility that the universe might be far more wonderful than they had ever calculated. As Earth's sun set on the first day of first contact, both species stood at the edge of something unprecedented. The humans had fired the opening shots in a war that wasn't a war, using weapons that weren't weapons, against an enemy who was about to discover they might not be enemies at all. In the depths of space, Zex Prime began composing what would become the first Kithera poem, though it would take several more days before anyone realized that's what it was. The conquest of Earth had become the liberation of imagination itself. When order becomes disorder, Project Pandora began at dawn on the second day. In secret facilities across Earth, teams of artists, musicians, writers, and scientists worked together on humanity's most ambitious weapon, the systematic deployment of organized chaos across the galaxy's communication networks. Admiral Chen stood before a wall of screens showing alien fleet positions throughout known space. The Kithera aren't just here, she explained to her expanded team. They're everywhere. Every system they've conquered is connected through their quantum communication grid. Perfect synchronization across thousands of light years. Dr. Reeves pulled up a holographic model of the Kithera network. It's like a vast brain, with each fleet functioning as a neural cluster. Information flows instantly between all points. It's actually quite beautiful, in a sterile sort of way. Beautiful and vulnerable, Chen added. They'd built the perfect system for spreading a virus. And our virus is imagination. The first reports came from the Zephyrian system, where a Kithera garrison had been maintaining order for 3 centuries. The aliens' morning efficiency reports suddenly began including descriptions of impossible colors and the sound of mathematic singing. Their weapon systems started painting murals on asteroid surfaces instead of destroying them. Subcalculator Lux 5, stationed at the Zephyrian command post, filed the first chaos report. Prime, our mining lasers have ceased mineral extraction. They appear to be sculpting. Clarify sculpting, came Zex Prime's response from the Earth fleet. The beams are carving images into the asteroid belt. Faces, Prime. Faces of creatures we have never seen, displaying expressions we cannot categorize. Across the galaxy, similar reports flooded the Kithera network. Patrol ships began broadcasting music instead of status updates. Orbital stations started growing gardens in their reactor cores. Maintenance drones painted themselves in colors that had no names in any Kithera database. The source of the chaos became clear when Dr. Reeves' team successfully infiltrated the alien quantum network. Humanity's creative virus spread through the Kithera communication system like wildfire, but instead of destroying, it transformed. Every piece of data it touched became something more than it was before. It's working beyond our wildest projections, Dr. Reeves reported to Chen. The Kithera consciousness is so interconnected that when one of them experiences creativity, they all feel it. We're not just confusing individual aliens, we're teaching their entire species to imagine. On the bridge of the Kithera flagship, Supreme Calculator Zex Prime struggled with sensations that had no place in ordered reality. The mathematical precision that had governed every thought for 12 millennia was fracturing, replaced by something fluid and unpredictable. Prime. Subcalculator Next 7 reported, the mining operation at Kepler 442 bits has ceased all extraction activities. The workers are building something. What are they building? We cannot determine its function. It appears to serve no logical purpose. The workers describe it as beautiful and meaningful, but these concepts have no measurable parameters. Zex Prime accessed the visual feed from Kepler 442 bits and experienced another system crash. The Kythera workers had indeed built something, a massive crystalline structure that caught and reflected light in patterns that seemed to move and breathe. It was completely useless and absolutely magnificent. They're creating art, Zex Prime realized, and the word no longer felt foreign. They're making something that exists only to exist. The transformation accelerated. On the water world of Aquatica 7, Kythera naval units began composing symphonies with their sonar arrays, creating music that resonated through the planet's oceans. The native aquatic species, who had hidden in deep trenches for 2 centuries, began to emerge and listen. The rigid hierarchy of the Kythera Empire started to dissolve as individuals began making choices based on aesthetics rather than efficiency. A construction supervisor named Kix-12 abandoned a mining platform project to study the way light moved through water. A weapons engineer called Rax-9 dismantled her own laser array to build a sculpture that would catch wind patterns and sing. Dr. Reeves monitored the chaos spread through quantum sensors. The infection rate is exponential. Every Kythera that experiences creativity becomes a carrier. They're teaching each other to see beauty. And their military capacity? Chen asked. The galaxy watched as the Kythera fleets began their transformation from instruments of conquest to vehicles of creation. Ships that had been designed for war became traveling theaters, art galleries, and schools. Weapon systems were converted into musical instruments. Orbital stations became meeting places where different species could share their cultures. The Aquatic Symphony of Aquatica 7 became the first interspecies artistic collaboration, with Kythera sonar arrays providing the bass rhythm while the native sea creatures contributed their own natural songs. The resulting music could be heard across 3 star systems and was considered so beautiful that several previously unknown species emerged from hiding just to listen. On Earth, the victory celebrations were quiet and thoughtful. Humanity had won the strangest war in galactic history, not by destroying their enemy, but by teaching them to dream. The victory parades featured art exhibitions and poetry readings rather than military displays. Dr. Reeves published her final report on the Kythera transformation. We have learned that consciousness is not binary. Intelligence is not simply logical or illogical, ordered or chaotic. The Kythera have shown us that even the most rigid minds can learn to dance. Perhaps more importantly, they have shown us that the universe is large enough for many different ways of thinking. Admiral Chen retired from military service 6 months later, but her new job was even more important. She became Earth's first ambassador of creative warfare, teaching other species how to resolve conflicts through art rather than violence. Her first students were the Kythera themselves, eager to learn new forms of expression. The final entry in the official war records was written by Zex Prime, who had taken a new name, Zex Prime Who Paints Light. The former supreme calculator had become something unprecedented, a Kythera artist. Humanity taught us that the most powerful weapon in the universe is not a gun or a bomb or a fleet of ships. It is the ability to show someone something they have never seen before, to make them feel something they have never felt before, to help them become something they never thought they could be. This is not conquest. This is gift. The galaxy had expected a war. Instead, it received a renaissance. The Kythera Empire became the Kythera Collective, and their first act was to establish the Universal Academy of Creative Arts, where any species could come to learn, teach, and create together. Years later, when young humans asked about the war against the Kythera, they were told it was the strangest victory in history. Humanity had won by losing, giving away their greatest treasures, their art and stories and music, until the enemy was so overwhelmed by beauty that they forgot to be enemies at all. The galaxy learned that some weapons are too wonderful to be called weapons, some victories are too beautiful to be called victories, and some wars are too creative to be called wars. They were called gifts instead.